peeps. Today is Tuesday, May 12th. We are on our second lesson of week 7. So I'm going to move this out of the way. Our agenda today, we're going to go through together our what, why, and how. You have your second to last no red ink lesson. And then you're going to do this activity that I haven't really decided what I want to call it yet. It's sort of a scale activity. It's sort of a rating activity. Call it what you want. It's due at the end of class, okay? So, click. What are we doing? How are we doing that thing? How are you going to know you're on track? Why are we doing it? All that kind of stuff. So today we're going to be talking about values, and you guys are going to be sort of rating where different statements are in terms of how important they are to you. And why we're doing that is because we've talked about this idea of values and things that are important to you, right? We've talked about it in advisory. We've talked about it when we did our second step lessons. We talked about it in our culture and belonging unit. And now we're going to talk a little bit about how those values might change with age, change with experience, change with, who you are as you're growing and developing as a person. And how we're going to do this is you guys are going to submit this activity at the end of class. Like I said, rating activity, scale activity, whatever you want to call it, it's due at the end of class. So you guys have your last set of no red ink lessons this week. This is your second to last lesson, so make sure that you get those done. So in our culture and belonging unit, like I kind of said before, we spent a lot of time talking about values of different cultural and ethnic groups. So, for example, we read What to Bring. We read My Favorite Chaperone, right? And one of the things that we really talked about when we talked about what to bring, right, I had put up some of the books that I had in my room about different religious groups, right? So we had a Muslim book, we had a Buddhism book, and those were up for you guys to look at and just to think about different articles of maybe clothing that are important to different religious, ethnic, cultural groups, right? Different little trinkets and things, right? We talked about one of the families had brought with them like a small gold cross, that kind of stuff, right? We talked about how what is important and what is emphasized, like physical stuff, right, can change across your background. But then what we also started to get into when we got more below the surface and we talked about values and beliefs, we talked about things like the importance of family, right? Family over everything else. The importance of education, right? We read one story where a girl and her sister, right, she had written the piece about Romeo and Juliet, and she talked about how she saw her education as sort of her doorway to becoming an American and living the American dream, right? She saw her education as a way to make her parents proud for all the sacrifices that they had made coming from Laos to give her a better life. And then one of the things that we also talked about in our culture and belonging unit was we sort of looked at that eye that I drew on the board, right? And I know it wasn't a very pretty eye, but I tried, right? And we talked about your stuff that can't change and stuff that can change, stuff you have control over and stuff you don't have control over. And we talked about how those impact the lens through which you see the world, right, that eye, and then also the lens through which the world sees you. So when we looked at that eye, right, we talked about socioeconomic status. We talked about your ethnic background. We talked about your race. We talked about first language, country of origin, right? What country are you born in? What country does your family come from? We talked about gender. We talked about sexuality, right? somebody who identifies as a lesbian might perceive the world differently than somebody who identifies as straight. Someone who identifies as straight might be perceived by the world, right? So that's the in word, might be perceived by the world differently than someone who identifies as a lesbian. Someone who speaks English as their first language, right, might perceive the world differently than someone who speaks let's say Korean as their first language, right? They interact with the world differently. And so one of the things that we're going to start to think about and talk about is the idea of your values, right? So we're not really going to get in depth again like we did with culture and belonging, talking about your lenses. But we are going to talk about your values, right? And so we've already talked about all the different things that can help you develop your values and beliefs. Now we're going to talk actually about those values and beliefs for you as young adults. So I have on there one such example we talked about was the importance of putting your family above all else, right? So your values, right? Two things to kind of think about. Things you believe to be important and ideas you live your life by. Right? Your values, you as a person, right? Me, Erin Kelty, right? My values. So, now I'm in the way again. Some of your values might change over the course of your life, right? So here's me. I kind of made this to like try and, make it do a thing. Here's me, right? And I have these little circles that show my ages. So at 15, right, one of my like most valued things was my friends, right? I wanted to prove to my friends I was loyal to them. I wanted to make lifelong memories with my friends. I wanted to maintain friendships I had had from a young age. So at 15, right, one of the things I valued the most was my friends. When I turned 19, right, I was a freshman, sophomore-ish in college. And one of the most important things for me was doing well in college because I started to understand, right, the better that I did in college, the more likely I was to graduate from college. And then I moved into that value sort of morphed and moved into my, 22 years old, right? I was graduated from college and my goal was to find and keep a good job, right? That's what's hidden behind here is a job, right? So it kind of rolls in together, 19 and 20, right? I wanted to do well in college, to be able to graduate from college, to be able to find and keep a good job, right? To be able to afford things for myself. It was really important for me to be independent and on my own and not need help from anybody else, okay? So those were my values right there, right? And then now I'm 26 and I'm going to be a corgi mom. Let's let that sink in, folks. I'm going to be a corgi mom officially on June 20th. We are bringing home our corgi. So if you are watching, it is real. Miss Kelty is going to be bringing home a corgi. So my values have shifted, right? From my friends to now I really, really, really want to be the best corgi mom ever. And yes, if you're watching, I did use this lesson to drop the bomb to you all that I'm getting a corgi. So we all have things that are important to us, and those things can change a lot from person to person or even from one age to another, right? So for me, getting a corgi might be like the most important thing ever in the whole entire world. But for my best friend, Jillian, probably not the same thing, okay? So there are different things you guys can think about in terms of your values, right? Religion, what sort of role does religion play? I have right there recreation, right? Recreation, right? What do you do? Like, are you out and about, like, planting things? Are you an artist? Are you, whatever? What's your deal? Do you like to travel, right? I put that little food thing there. Are you someone who wants to try new things? Are you someone who wants to be all over the world? Are you someone who wants to broaden your horizons, right? Are you someone who really values memories and making memories? Are you someone who values life events? Like, at this point in your life, you want to go to college, you want to get married, you want to have kids, you want to retire. You got like a whole plan, right? Are you somebody who really values music? Would you probably pay money to go see a concert rather than put money into savings, right? All that kind of stuff sort of tells us a lot about you and what you value. So, what is important to you right now? This is what our entire lesson is leading up to. It is the scale. So it's just called May 12th scale. That's just what I called it, right? Because, I don't know, scale, rating scale, something like rating activity, whatever. And it says, why am I over here? I don't know. It says, right, read the statements below, thinking about how each statement, is important to you. How is it important to you? Is it important to you? Or how important is it? You're going to rate the statements using the scale right here. So it says a 1 would be, I don't really know. Right? I can't really decide if that's important to me or not. A 2 is not at all. A 3 is kind of important, and a 4 is very important, okay? So, completing all of my schoolwork to the best of my abilities. Is that something that's super important to me? Yeah, probably, so I'm going to put a 4. Some of you guys I know get really into your like color coding. So you might, color code each of the things and then go through and do that. I don't really care, right? It is up to you. It is your rating scale. Achieving a B or higher on all assignments, right? I kind of think that's different than completing all of my work to the best of my abilities, right? Because you can try and just say, well, I gave it my best, or you can be like, I need to get an A, an A. Those are kind of two different attitudes, right? How important is it for you to tell the truth? How important is it for you to make new friends? If you don't really care about making new friends, how important is it for you to keep your friends, right? Maintaining your friendships. So there are 17 responses for you to do. Once you've gone through and you've given a number to each one, you're going to hit submit. So I'm going to repeat that. You're going to give a number to each one. So I'm not going to write, I don't really know. Blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to go into some big, long explanation, right? I'm just going to put the number there. That's it. That's all I'm doing. Just putting the number. Okay? That is what you have to do at the end of class today. Good luck, peeps.